Alrighty, so match week number 21 is upon us, and this is once again one of those week that, for some like myself want to watch as many MLS games as possible. This week sucks because all 14 games is going to be happening at Saturday, and it will especially suck for those that are trying to watch all these games in the East Coast because we have a lot of late night kickoff. In fact, I think there's like four games that's going to be happening at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and that's by far the most we have. And even one game pushed back an hour because of the Texas heat. But we start off with the first one, which is Charlotte versus Montreal. This is going to be the first of six games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. And coming into this game, Charlotte 6-5-8, while Montreal 8-1-9. And in terms of the all-time meeting, this is only the third meeting between both of these teams. Montreal has won both of those meetings, with them winning 2-1 last year against Charlotte, and then on the road they were able to win 2-0 against Charlotte FC. So we know Montreal. This is a team that is very hot when they are playing at home. The road form's been a problem, and knowing that Charlotte is also a team that the home form this season hasn't been great. I mean, it could have been worse because in the beginning of the year it was bad to a point where they were having problem in terms of getting home wins at Bank of America Stadium. But it has gone better. But facing against a Montreal side that have a big victory against Nashville, which I think that's going to be also interesting to see that, after such a big victory that Montreal has against Nashville, you could either use that as momentum heading into the next game, or is there going to be a letdown coming into this? So it's going to be interesting to see how this, of course, would turn out. But moving on in the next match is Columbus versus Nashville. So this easily is one that I would say out of all these games that we're going to keep an eye on. This is one I think neutral will love because I think there could be some high scoring affair between both of these teams. Both of these teams love to go on the attack. And in general, Columbus game has just been very entertaining. And anytime when Wilfred Nancy coach a team, he's going to play that entertaining style of soccer. Columbus, of course, 8-4-6, and Nashville 10-5-4. And not to mention, this is one of the rare time we get to see a battle between two of the best number 10 in the league. Hani Mukhtar, who is the reigning MVP and potentially could win it again this year against Lucas Arian, who, people forget that he is a very decent number 10 himself, too. But coming into this one, 8-4-6, that is Columbus, while Nashville 10-5-4, and they definitely want to bounce back because they definitely lost some ground to FC Cincinnati in that supporter shield race. All-time meeting, it's dead even at 2 wins, 2 draw, and 2 losses for both of these teams. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, Nashville did win the last one 3-1 against Columbus, while Columbus, of course, did lose 1-0 to Nashville. Well, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then Columbus win 2-0 against Nashville. And keep in mind, they just played each other not long ago, and I remember that game between Nashville and Columbus. Very entertaining to watch. So I expect this could be the same case in this one. I expect this to be a relatively entertaining game too. Don't be surprised. We might see some goals that could be scored in this one. But moving on in the next one is DC United versus FC Cincinnati. So as I mentioned, Cincinnati, they are on a record pace right now. After last home game, they were able to match the record for the most consecutive home win in an MLS season, tying with the Quakes back in 2003. They're looking to continue that, but on the road this time against DC United, who's 6-5-8, while FC Cincinnati just ridiculous. 13-4-1 is their record. It's hard to believe that we're halfway in the season and they've only lost once so far this year, and that again, I think they're also in hand of breaking the record for the fewest lost in a season to keep this up. All-time meeting 4-3-2 in favor of DC, but recently it's been Cincinnati the ones that's been leading the all-time, or has been playing much better in the all-time meeting. With a 2-1 win against DC last time before FC Cincinnati was able to win their first game against DC in style, winning 5-2 on the road. They did lose 1-0 against DC, lose 4-2 against DC, and then draw 0-0 against FC Cincinnati. But keep in mind, this was the pre-Pat Nolan FC Cincinnati team, a team that is basically a laughing stock before to a team that is just an absolute juggernaut. It's hard to believe that 2 years apart that this team went from being literally the dumpster fire in the bottom of the Eastern Conference to a team that is just running away with the supporter shield race. And I expect they could get another win in this one, and especially Lucho Costa. He's going to be up for this one too against his former team DC in this one, and that DC just been very inconsistent lately. I mean, this is going to be a tall task if they can not get a win against a Cincinnati team that again only one team so far this season has been able to do so. But moving on, we got New England versus Toronto FC. So this one is also one that is pretty easy to predict because the Revs, we know they're good at home this season, 9-6-3. In fact, I think they're still unbeaten at home this season. They're one of the two Eastern Conference team that is still unbeaten alongside with FC Cincinnati. Whereas for TFC, 3-10-6, it's been a disastrous season for Bob Bradley's side. All-time meeting 15-13-10 in favor of New England, and the last five head-to-head meeting. Last time both of these teams met earlier this season, New England won 2-0 on the road. Then it was a 2-2 draw before a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then New England winning 2-1 on the road, and then Toronto actually won 3-2 on the road against the New England Revolution. But I don't see this happening. I mean, the Revs, we know Bruce Arena team feasts on facing against inferior opponent this season, and knowing the fact that they're also not that far away from that second position. I mean, I mentioned Nashville losing ground, but New England is definitely catching up to trying to get that second position too. So yeah, you know that they want to get a win in this one, and again, it feels like it's a very winnable game against the TFC side that this season it's just been bad this year. Let's be honest, and if they need some sort of miracle, if they can pull this off, which we've seen it before in MLS. Maybe one team that has no shot of winning, and then they surprise us all. That's what TFC is definitely going to trying to hope for, especially now that New England has started to get help here, especially on the attacking end. But moving on, we got the New York Red Bulls versus Atlanta United. So the Red Bulls 4-8-6, while Atlanta is 7-8-4. And in terms of the all-time meeting, this has been a meeting whenever both of these teams meet. The Red Bulls have been the more dominant side, 9-4-2 over Atlanta. Though earlier this season, Atlanta finally got their first regular season win against the New York Red Bulls, winning 1-0 at home before the Red Bulls did win 2-1 on the road. Then they won 2-1 at home against Atlanta before it was a no draw between both of these teams. In fact, it was a pair of no draw that wraps up the last five head-to-head between both of these teams. And like I said about Atlanta the games, you know that there's going to be a late goals that could be scored because that's how Atlanta United games has been. But in some way, I would say maybe this is kind of a desperation derby game too, because for Atlanta, yes, they got a draw in the last game, but you just kind of sense that they need to start getting themselves wins as well, trying to climb up the table. Well, for the Red Bulls, I mean, that Troy Lesnar head coach boost, it is all gone right now, and that they also themselves need to get wins at home, which this season, just like last season, they've been having problems in terms of getting home wins at Red Bull Arena. Now, moving on, we got Philadelphia versus Inter Miami. So, this is an interesting one because on paper you would say this is an easy win for the Union because the Union 9-4-5 against a Miami team that is clearly waiting for Messi. I mean, pretty much all their fan base are all caring about when we get to League Cup and how. I mean, can you say that maybe Inter Miami might be one of the favorites now that Messi is going to be playing in the League Cup? I mean, it's hard to not say that they are no, they could be in contending for that trophy when you literally have arguably the greatest player of all time playing for your team and also them getting some supporting cast. But so far this season, before the whole Messi mania is gonna come, still bad. I mean, 5-0-2 is the record. They're in the midst of another six-game losing streak, which knowing Inter Miami, they have had a knack in terms of snapping out six-game losing streaks. So this is why I've said that, yes, it looked like on paper it's an easy win for the Union. Not. I would say that if I really want to see a game that could be an upset, this could potentially be one because when you look at the all-time meeting, yes, the Union does lead the all-time meeting, but it's not by much. 3-2 and 2 in favor of Inter Miami. And don't forget, Inter Miami has already got a win against the Union before on the road. But in the last game, they actually did win against the Union. 2-0 was the win, while the Union did get the 2-1 road win against Inter Miami. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. And then, as I mentioned, Inter Miami was able to win 2-1 against the Philadelphia Union, and that kind of also ended a long home unbeaten streak that the Union has had. So again, you would think that the Union should get an easy win in this one, but again, this is the thing about Inter Miami, and especially I know the new head coach boost, or in this case, the new interim head coach boost with Javier Morales hasn't kicked in. He could kicked in this game, and that the Union's got to be careful. Like they can take Inter Miami lightly. This is a team that I'm pretty sure they know that they need to start winning games. I mean, I know they are waiting for Messi, but they don't want to get to the point where they're waiting for Messi and basically or just pray that he's going to be the guy that can carry them into the playoffs, which I think they could, but they don't want to be so far out, and they are pretty far out in terms of where they are in the standing, dead last in the East, and the playoff line in ninth position. But moving on, we got Sporting KC versus the Chicago Fire. So this is an interesting one. I would say this is kind of a game where I won't be surprised we might see some weird things happen in this one, because you got to say that between two teams that has been probably the most snake bitten this season, it's got to be between both of these teams. I mean, both of these teams has just have not a lot of luck in their hand. Sporting KC 5, 6, and 9, and just as you thought that the month of May they had the best record out of any team in the month of May, and looks like things are turning around. And then the last couple of games happen where they start losing games again, and losing games in pretty familiar circumstances compared to when they start the season 10 games without a win. Whereas for the Chicago Fire, it was a miracle the fact that they were able to hold on to a 2-1 win. I mean, I don't think any Fire fans would have thought that they were able to hold on to a road win against the Timbers, but that improved their record to 4, 8, and 6, and this actually is the only game that starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll mention why that is the case in a bit. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 22, or not 22, 27, 12, and 20 in favor of the Fire. Last five head-to-head matchup, the Fire did win 3-1 against Sporting KC before Sporting KC won 2-0 against Chicago. Then it was a 2-2 draw, a 1-0 win for Sporting KC, and then another 1-0 win for Sporting KC over the Chicago Fires. And like I said, weird things could happen in this one. I mean, you could maybe even say that this could be a desperation derby too, because both of these teams are supposed to have much better season compared to where they are right now, and we'll see who can potentially get the win in this one. I mean, can you imagine if the Fire can go win again and they make it two in a row and give their fans hopes up again? I think that's the issue with the Chicago Fire, where it just feels like they're trying to give their fans hope that maybe things are turning around, and then maybe things are not. Not. And if you're Sporting KC, I mean, if you lose this one, then all of a sudden, I think the pressure is back on Peter Vermees, because again, this team is more healthier now, and yet, in the last couple of games, they have kind of revert to where they were in the first 10 game of the season, which is a team that just looked completely out of their depth, out of anyone, and just looked completely snake bitten game after game. But moving on into the last game on this board, we got Austin versus the Houston Dynamo. So as I mentioned, this game was supposed to start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but I mentioned in the news of the week episode, they pushed this game back an hour because it was expected to be 100 degrees in Austin. And again, I've said this before. I feel like I understand that Apple TV want all of these games that to start at 7:30 p.m. local time for every team. I think Austin's got to be an exception. In fact, I would say that some of these cities that have experienced 100-degree weather, like all those Texas teams, it should not be a kickoff earlier than 8 o'clock. I mean, it has got to be brutal for these players to play under the Texas sun, even if we're getting into the nighttime. It can still be boiling hot by the time when we get to the nighttime, but yeah, they're going to be playing this at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So local time is going to be 8:30, and I think that's right around when the sun set in Austin. But coming into this Copa Tejas, Austin 6-4-8, while Houston 8-3-7, and all-time meeting 4-0-3 in favor of Austin. And the last five head-to-head matchup, well, so far Austin has not lost to Houston ever at Q2 Stadium, though they did lose 2-1 against Houston before Houston win 2-0 against Austin. And then Austin won 3-1 against Houston, a 2-1 Austin win against Houston again, and then Austin winning 2-1 against Houston this time at home. So, yeah, again, this is the thing about Los Verdes, about this season, how after a big victory that they had against their other Texas rival, that is FC Dallas, can use that momentum and potentially get a win, because it feels like every time where it looked like things were looking good, and that in the last game you can see there was progress or started to made, they kind of stinked up in the very next game, and they better not do that if they want to face against a Dynamo team that, again, Ben Olsen, he has done a great job with this team, and this is a Dynamo team that is just absolutely fuego. It pretty much just summarize the weather in Texas right now. They are just red hot right now, probably the hottest team right now in the league. And even though I know it's on the road, which historically they have not been performing well on the road, you look at how good have been in the last couple of games. I don't think Austin should take this lightly. I mean, this is a very good Houston team with a lot of confidence, and that I expect this should be an interesting Copa TS game, just like what we saw in the last one against FC Dallas. Though hopefully this one it'll be between two teams that have their strongest starting 11, because in the last game against Dallas didn't really play like their strongest 11 because of injuries and resting guys. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 6 games to wrap up the Saturday night action of match week number 21. So, as I mentioned before, if you're living in the East Coast and you are trying to watch all of these MLS games, I definitely set my sincere condolences because of the fact that there's a lot of late night games. In fact, pretty much half of the game this week is going to be kicking off at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and then beyond. And there's going to be 4 of them kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and that also includes some teams that are from the Eastern Conference that's going to be playing Western Conference team at that time. So again, if you're a fan of those teams, I mean, it's got to be brutal to have to watch your team play that late into the evening. But that being said, moving on to the next one, we got the Winspoon Derby between Colorado versus the LA Galaxy. So I know people say that a Winspoon Derby doesn't really matter. I I care. I think I care when it's a wooden spoon derby, because we usually don't see that happen when you have two last place teams go off against each other. And I've also said this about wooden spoon derby. People think that it's going to be boring and nothing is going to happen. I don't think so. I think this could be an interesting game between the Rapids and the LA Galaxy. And also, this is probably the best opportunity for the Rapids to get their first home win. I mean, it's hard to believe they have not got a home win this season, and we're now already halfway into the season, and they have a 2-7-9 record, while the Galaxy 3-5-9. All-time meeting 45, 12, and 34 in favor of the Galaxy, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, both of these teams met earlier this season, and the Rapids were able to get one of their 2 wins this season. 3-1 win on the road against the Galaxy. That was the Kevin Cabral revenge game against the Galaxy. Before the Galaxy won 4-1 against the Rapids, a 2-0 home win against the Galaxy, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then a 2-1 road win that the Rapids had against the LA Galaxy. So again, this is a game that people don't expect much to happen. But again, when you have a Winspoon derby like that between two of the worst team in the league, you know that there's going to be hunger to trying to get wins, because you don't want to get yourself to that last place spot if you don't win the game. And not to mention, if there is going to be a spark to get a miraculous turnaround in the second half, this is a perfect way to start. So we'll see who exactly is going to do so. But now moving on, in the next game, we got RSL versus Minnesota. So RSL has been the team that also has been on a bit of a hot streak, but that's been mostly on the road. At home, that's been kind of a problem this season. And they face against a Minnesota team that kind of had the same issue that RSL has, which is this is a team that is played very well on the road, but they've been having problem when it comes to home form. Although the road form for Minnesota in the last couple of games, it's been kind of iffy. 5-5-7 is the record for the Loons, while RSL 7-5-7. All-time meeting, Minnesota still leads the all-time meeting 5-6-3, and the last time both of these teams met at Allianz Field earlier this season, it was a 1-1 draw, for RSL winning 3-0 against Minnesota, and then they winning 3-2 against Minnesota, and then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then RSL was able to go on the road to beat Minnesota 2-1. So the Loons, it's been a while since they have beaten Minnesota. I remember this used to be one of the favorite opponent. Whenever I watched this team play against RSL, I just had a feeling it's going to be a win because they love playing them. That has kind of changed in the last 5 games. They have struggled to even get a win against them, and that again, it's not going to be easy in this one too. Though again, I've said this when they took that loss against Montreal, which I think that was kind of the rock bottom moment for this team. They got a long break to think about this, and that I hope this break can actually refresh this team, because it's been like 14 days since this team has played, and playing against an RSL team that have played a lot of games lately. And I know even though they're back at home, but again, home form has been a problem for RSL this season. And when you play so much game like that, fatigue is going to become an issue. And against a much fresher team from Minnesota, I expect things to be better heading into the second half. Now, I said that against Montreal, and that did not happen. So let's just hope that's not going to be the case in this one too. But now moving on, we got LAFC versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. I think this is the first time they play in the league because I know both of these teams play in the CONCACAF Champions League, and it was not close. I mean, LAFC won 3-0 in both of those matches, but this, of course, is the first of 4 games that's going to start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Like I said, there is a lot of games that starts at that time. I don't know why that is the case. But LAFC 9-5-3, while Vancouver 5-7-5. All-time meeting, it's a 6-3-4 record for LAFC, and the last 5 head-to-head. I'm not going to include the CCL two-legged affair, but Vancouver did win 1-0 last time in league play against LAFC before LAFC won 3-1 against Vancouver. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then Vancouver won 2-1 against LAFC, and then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. So, I talk about Vancouver. They're a team that does at times create a bit of a knack in terms of LAFC and kind of provide a little bit of a kryptonite on LAFC at times when they face off against each other. But that only applies when they're playing at BC plays. When it comes to Bank of America, or not Bank of America, BMO Stadium there, got the wrong bank name there. But when it comes to playing at LAFC home, yeah, Vancouver has not had a lot of luck in terms of, I don't think they even got a win against LAFC on the road so far. Well, to be fair, not a lot of team has been able to get wins on the road against LAFC, but yeah, for LAFC, I know this team is really tired right now. I mean, this is pretty much the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of just games after games after games for them in the past month or so, and we'll see whether they can finish that strong. And again, it's a winnable game too because Vancouver. I would say for the Whitecaps, the good news for the Whitecaps is that they do get extra rest. They were supposed to play in the middle of the week against Colorado, but that game got postponed because of inclement weather, so they should be well rested in this one against a very tired LAFC team. And well, I take back what I said about this being a winnable game. Maybe not so because I know Vancouver is going to try to play that transitional kind of play to hit LAFC on the counterattack, and there's been times LAFC has been exposed because of it. Just watch that game against Houston, and that's a good example of it. And I feel like Vanni Sartini is going to copy what Ben Olsen is going to do. They're going to sit deep. They're going to make LAFC work, and then try to count on the other end and catch this LAFC team off guard in the other end. But moving on, we got the Portland Timbers versus NYCFC. So it's hard to believe that this is actually the rematch of MLS Cup in 2021. But both of these teams has kind of took a bit of a fall from grace ever since that MLS Cup. But this game between the Timbers, who is 5-6-8 and fresh off of a really disappointing loss against the Chicago Fire at home, whereas for NYCFC 4-8-7, and they were on their cusp of winning against Atlanta, and then they drop points in that one because they couldn't hold on to the lead. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 5-1-1 in favor of NYCFC, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 3-1 road win that the Timbers had against NYCFC before a 1-0 road win against NYCFC, and then the Timbers won 3-0 against NYCFC, and then it was a 1-0 road win that the Timbers had against NYCFC. By the way, that 1-1 draw, NYCFC eventually won it in a PK shootout in that MLS Cup. And I'm pretty sure that's been something that Timbers fans still remember, and they know that, I mean, they've been waiting 2 years for some revenge, and this is definitely a chance to do so, especially against an NYCFC team that, again, they're just treading water right now and waiting for the transfer window to booster up the team. So we'll see whether or not the Timbers can do so. I mean, the issue for the Timbers is clearly goal scoring on this team, and that we'll see whether if they can fix that. In fact, I would say both teams. That's been the issue this season, and don't be surprised. Every week we get a 0-0 draw. This may be the game that could feature a 0-0 draw, and then watch how this game ends up to be like 4-3 because I said that. But moving on, in the next match, we got the Quakes versus St. Louis City. So this is the second time that the Quakes, of course, play against St. Louis. And remember how I said this is the first ever meeting? That's actually incorrect. They actually met each other earlier this season, but as a Quakes fan, I might as well just say this is the first ever meeting because let's not talk about how St. Louis absolutely well, I wouldn't say dominant, but just play the Quakes out of the park, especially with the press with a 3-0 win against the Quakes. Now this game is going to be 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. The Quakes 7-7-6, while St. Louis 9-2-7. And I would say that, for the Quakes, if there is a time to play against St. Louis, this is the time to do so because St. Louis, they are on they're on a bit of a downward trend. I think even in a bigger downward trend than when they win 5 wins in a row and they kind of go through a little bit of a blip. But this has been even more alarming considering the fact that they haven't won a game in the last 4 games, and that they've been battling some injury to some of these key players on this team. I mean, not having the likes of Edouard Leuven and Joe Klaus has been huge. Well, not in Joe Klaus because Giacchini has been a big replacement, but the Leuven injury that has really hurt this team on the attacking end. So we'll see whether or not the Quakes can capitalize on that. But again, both of these teams are going to be very tired coming into this one, and for the Quakes, we just need to brush off after that bad performance against Houston. I mean, I knew that game was going to be a disastrous class, and hopefully this team can rebound heading into this week. I mean, I feel like in that last game, it was pretty clear that maybe Luchi Gonzalez realized that, yeah, they probably have no shot of winning, so they just kind of punt that game away. And knowing the fact that this is a team that's been very good at home, in fact, they're the only team right now in the West who have not lost a game this season at home. I do have some good hope that they can actually bounce back in this game against the St. Louis side that, like I said, they have not been playing well in the last 4 games. And then finally, we got Seattle versus Orlando City. So this game, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and it's the last game that is going to kick off around that time. But Seattle 8-4-7, while Orlando 7-6-5. And in terms of the all-time meeting, it's been pretty much in favor of the Sounders, 4-1-1 over Orlando. But Orlando did get their first win against Seattle in the last head-to-head meeting. It was a 3-2 win on the or not on the road, but at home, that is. But before that, it was a 2-1 win that Seattle has against Orlando, a 2-1 road win that Seattle has against Orlando, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then a 3-1 road win for Seattle over Orlando City. So again, this is a game that just like the Portland versus NYCFC game. I won't be surprised this could be a game that be a little bit low scoring because goal scoring has been kind of an issue for both of these team too, and that again, I think what's also going to be difficult, and I didn't mention this about NYCFC, but because it's a short week, this is the third game in 7 days for these team, and they have to travel all the way across the other side of the country on a short week. It's not going to be easy, and then we'll see whether if that's going to be the case for both of these East Conference team facing against a Pacific Northwest team, or in this case a Cascadia team. But for Seattle, they also need to get themselves back into winning form. I mean, it's been a while since they have won at Lumen Field. It's crazy to say that they have not won at Lumen Field for like I think now a month now or so. I mean, I didn't know that they won against the Red Bulls, but I think that was back in like early May or so. For either way, they need to win games at home. I mean, that's supposed to be a place that they have always done well whenever they play, but it's been a complete different story in the last couple of games. And in the last game, they definitely want to bounce back after a fruitless performance that they had against LAFC. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at these games. And as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this game, and make sure you leave your prediction for all 14 of these games. That, like I said, it's gonna happen during that busy night action, and this is also gonna be one of those weeks why people are complaining to Apple about this way too many games happening during a condensed schedule. And I'm pretty sure Apple is definitely listening, and that I think they might be using that as an advice thinking about next season, where I'm surprised next season we might see things change up and we might see the return of Sunday game, because again, this is kind of ridiculous with the way that not only in the early action we got like 7 games happening at the same time. Well, yeah, 7 games that's gonna happen at the same time, and then on the back end we got 7 games happening at the same time too. It's just way too much action, which is also the reason why I'm not even gonna plan to watch all of it. I'll pretty much just watch the MLS 360 and then watch the highlights of some of these games because when you have so many games like these happening at the same time, at least I'm glad that MLS 360 exists because that is probably the best tool in terms of trying to keep up these MLS action and as much of these MLS game as possible. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of this preview. And like I said, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games and make sure you leave your prediction of all of these games. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, and of course, we'll see you guys next time.